Apologies for being a few minutes late this morning, everybody. Everything seems to have gone wrong. And welcome to the Dewsbury Heritage Beeline and Memory Lane Tour. So you're probably wondering why it's called a Beeline and Memory Lane Tour. Well, it's a bit of a play on words. So the Beeline is we're going to be making a beeline round Dewsbury, looking at several different historic locations in the town. And along the way, we're going to be meeting some, you might say, famous characters from history of Dewsbury. Also, the Memory Lane. Now, the reason why Memory Lane is because part of the locations are from the Dewsbury documentary, Memory Lane, Dewsbury. So I've included those in the talk as well. What's extra special about today is actually it's 10 years since I released Memory Lane, Dewsbury, the documentary. So what I'm going to be doing as we go around certain locations, I've got a few bits of memorabilia in my case, some of which we use on screen, just to show you. It'd be remiss of me not to introduce you to some of my friends that I've brought back through time. Sir Thomas de Soot-Hill.
Hello.
Hello.
PC Alan Reid, whose great-grandson would eventually become a local historian and filmmaker called Simon Reid. Quite a cool name actually. So I wanted to start today's tour at Dewsbury Minster. The important thing about that is that it's the oldest building in Dewsbury, dates back to Saxon times. It is also believed that in 627 St Paulinus was sent here from Rome and preached on the banks of the River Calder and baptised his parishioners. That was 601. He travelled north with Queen Ethelberga to spread Christianity to the north of England, and on Easter Sunday 627 he baptised King Edwin of Northumbria so he could marry Queen Ethelberga in the church. The St Paulinus cross, 627 AD, seen in the Minster grounds and on Queen Ethelberga and Edwin, are featured on a stained glass window at Dewsbury Town Hall upstairs. Now we won't be looking at that today, but there is actually a photo of that in your handout. If you look to photo 1 and 3, you get to see that. Also, the 627 cross is remembered in the grounds and in the Minster. If you look on the lamppost just over there, you can see the emblem on the lamppost, the 627 cross. And also, when we leave the grounds of the Minster, you can actually see it on the gate post as well. I'll point that out as we leave this location. You can also see that on photo, I believe it's number 5. It's also worth mentioning that Patrick Bronte was curate here between 1809 and 1811, and there's also a blue plaque on the front of the Minster. One final thing to mention about the grounds is the grounds used to go out a lot further, and there used to be the Moot Hall and the Vicarage. Now both have since been demolished. The Moot Hall was demolished in 1962. It was said that originally it was to be taken down and rebuilt closer to the Minster itself, but sadly that never happened. I read in some paperwork in the archives that it was damaged too much for them to be able to rebuild it, sadly. Now the vicarage is very special. It used to have a character on top called the Pancake Dog, but I'm going to tell you more about that later. Now both those buildings were situated just near roughly where the crossing is at the front of the Minster, but I'll point that out when we go around that side. So I'm now going to introduce you to a very special person, Wallace Hartley, who was bandmaster on RMS Titanic, which sank in 1912. I was going to play us a little tune. just to mention a little bit more. Now don't go too harsh on him, but this gentleman over here, Sir Thomas de Soothill. Good morning, sir. It's said that Mr. Soothill, Sir Thomas de Soothill, is said to have fallen into a fit of rage on hearing that a servant boy had failed to attend church that week. He drowned the boy in a fit of rage, stricken with remorse of his act. As an act of penance, he paid for a bell to be put in the church, which is now the Minster, and asked for that to be rung once for every year on Christmas Eve, which has happened every year since, possibly only missed by COVID times.
Now twice it's been stopped.
Been stopped twice.
Once in the 1800s, there was a bell cracked in 3 cars.
Right.
And it was never rung during the Second World War. It was illegal to ring church bells in the Second World War because if they were rung, it would have been a warning to everybody that the invasion had started. So no churches were allowed to ring bells for any reason at all until the end of the war. When it was rung, it indicated that it was victory in Europe. So,
if anybody would know, I'd expect this chap to know.
yeah.
We're now going to head over to Church Street. Would you like to follow me, please? Just to point out that I mentioned earlier the 627 cross. It can be seen on both gate posts as we just left the grounds here. And as for the Moot Hall and Vicarage, those would have been positioned roughly in this area here. And across from there, just to add, we've had another building, in fact a large building, which would have been Church House, I believe, off the top of my head. Mike, would you like to follow me? Right, everybody, so we're here on Church Street. I'd like to tell you a bit about, first of all, just behind you, you've got what was a schoolhouse. It's now known as the Howland Centre, and that was built in 1843. Now, when we're over at the vicarage, I mentioned about the Minster, I mentioned about the vicarage and something about the pancake dog. Now, up until recent years, nobody really knew much about the pancake dog, and there's several other things that the history books seem to forget about. So I made it my mission to tell everybody about the pancake dog. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's the pancake dog? Sounds very strange. Over on the vicarage at the roof, there used to be a stone lion, but it was named the pancake dog by the children of the Sunday school. And for many years, in fact decades, parents and their parents would bring the children down to stand in the grounds, because legend has it that one year the pancake dog would come to life and jump to the ground for his pancake. Now obviously that never happened. Well, not exactly. Well, actually, during demolition at 12:15 on Tuesday the 16th of July 1889, they held a lowering service for yeast. It was terrible weather, it was raining, but still hundreds of people came down, because at that time it was such a big thing for people of Dewsbury. It went down through generations, and it amazes me, something so important that everybody would have known about, today very few know about. So I'm trying to change that. If you look on the top end gable, you'll actually see that is yeast. After the demolition, after the lowering service, it was actually stored in Savilletown and then eventually brought back and put on the roof of the Howland Centre. It's worth pointing out that the common part of the building would be facing the other side. So during the renovations, which would have been about 2017, they cleaned up yeast, repositioned him on this gable, and he's also been illuminated as well, making an absolute wonderful feature of yeast the pancake dog. Right, I'm going to introduce you to some more of my friends as well. So whilst at this location, I must point out John Greenwood's. Right, established in 1860, it is the oldest shop in Dewsbury and still in the same location. What they've recently done is built a small museum upstairs in the shop, which won't be seen today. You have to do it by appointment. If you ever get the chance, it's really worthwhile.
I have a video on my channel if you're interested.
There's one online. The stairs are really narrow and steep, but it's definitely worth a visit. Some of you may remember Millennium Bill. From my childhood, I remember Millennium Bill. He used to sit in the window as a little foam-made character, and my parents would bring me down and show me when I came down shopping. It's now in the museum because of the extreme temperature. When it gets warm and then cold, it's actually deteriorated. It's had to be taken out away, but it's still available to see inside John Greenwood's. So, John Greenwood's, obviously you may know or may not know, it used to be a pawnbroker's. People take things in, get the money. The most unusual thing to be pawned in at Greenwood's pawnbrokers, you won't believe it, a pig. Someone traded in, or took in a pig. And like I said, I'm going to introduce you to a few characters from historic Dewsbury today. And the pig is one of those characters. In addition to that, Dewsbury cobbler. But if you give them a wave, they might come out. Hey! Woo! Hey, I told you, I'm a man of my word. The original pig.
And it come round.
And Dewsbury cobbler and all.
Big.
You better be on your best behaviour. I've also got a school teacher here with us today, with a little pet. Hello and good morning. How are we all doing? That's superb. And how's Dewsbury cobbler on this fine day?
Is very well, thank you very much.
Have you been studying my shoes?
I haven't been looking at it because you normally have a brown pair on.
No.
I've noticed you've changed them.
I've tricked you this year.
You see.
I bought new ones.
You've even changed your suit as well. That's where it's thrown me a bit.
I'm very good at that. So I've noticed we've got a teacher here with us today as well. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Miss Lee. Yes,
Morning.
I'm Miss Lee. Yes. So I hope you've all got clean hands. Now look at your hands, please. Clean nails. Okay. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Stand up straight. Thank you.
Right, I think we've passed that. So,
What is that?
like I said, if you ever get the opportunity, it's worth booking at Greenwood and going to see the museum. I'll also take you around to the Dewsbury cobbler now. We can have a look at his old horns. As it says on the front, been here since 1978, which actually makes it the oldest business in Dewsbury, but to be run by the same family. So Greenwood's is the oldest shop, but it's different people now, whereas this has been in the same family since 1978. It's stood the test of time. A lot of that, I think, because it's a big part of the business, and also what they do is to keep so many pairs of shoes out of landfill by repairing them. They do other things as well, leather work, doing your handbags, repairing those, keeping them out of landfill, because this area, I'm sure you all know, it's known for shoddy mungo, which is recycling, and that's effectively what they're doing at Dewsbury cobbler, doing its bit for the planet, one step at a time. Would you like to join me on Tythe Barn Street? So, this next location, Tythe Barn Street, called that originally because there was a Tythe barn in the area. Just been talking, and actually, you're quite right, this used to be originally Robinson Street, and behind here you'd have a selection of different shops. You had a chip shop, you had Worth's toy shop, you also had a second Greenwood store, which was located just behind there, roughly where the carpet was. Behind here, so you've got the church, behind here used to be the Sunday school, so it would have come out and stood in this area just here. That's sadly been demolished. As you may know, during the 80s, a lot of the original buildings around here were earmarked to be demolished, and most were. The same was supposed to be for the church as well, but thankfully the church was saved, because that's another one where it was said it would be relocated somewhere else on the long causeway. Thankfully it's still in its original position. Also, during the demolition, they did a time capsule. So there's a time capsule hidden roughly in this area, but I'm not going to point out exactly where that is. You'll never know, but I know roughly where it is. Because a lot of the lower sections around town have been modernised. When you look up, you've got a lot of the original features and the telltale clues of the people that lived here before us. That being one of them. If you'd like to join me in front of the church, opposite Town Hall, thank you. So, as I previously said, the only really building that survived the 80s on this section would be the church, which was earmarked to be demolished. Thankfully it was saved. One building that wasn't saved would have been just across the road, the Lancashire and Yorkshire railway station, also known as Marketplace Station. Now that ran between 1867 to 1930 and demolished in 1938. Now the actual sheds would have, or the train station went along, see the grassy area? That's where the trains would have come in. And then the booking hall actually was just in front of the town hall. And the station master actually used to live upstairs in the booking hall. So it went all the way down that green section, and people booking from just over there. As you can see now, it's a memorial garden, and it's believed that there's an air raid shelter still underneath the Long Causeway Gardens. If you look at photo number 10, it shows you a comparison how it used to look to how it looks in recent times. There was more train stations in and around the Dewsbury area, 3 of which in the town, more or less in the centre. You've got Wellington Road Station, which is still there today, the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Station, and also Central Station, which we'll be visiting in about 10 or 15 minutes time. Now I'm going to test your memories now and your knowledge. Shortly we're going to be going over to Dewsbury Town Hall, arguably one of, if not the most magnificent buildings in Dewsbury. It opened in 1899, and you can just make out the Dewsbury flag, which is out flying today. Inside the town hall you had concert hall, council officers and the police station. Also inside the town hall there's a stained glass window that I mentioned earlier when we spoke over at Dewsbury Minster. If you get a chance, it's worth going in and having a look at that. It really is magnificent. There is a photo of that. I believe it's 12A and 12B in your handouts. You really need to see it in person to appreciate it. So there was a court in there. There's still a court, and it was also used as a police station. The police station is no longer in use, or the court, but the court does often appear on TV, you know, for dramas and films, and it's still there today. It can be viewed by appointment. So going back to the Dewsbury flag, which you can see just up there. So the sections on that, you've got the blue and gold section, if you can make that out, which is for William de Warne, the Earl of Surrey, who had a manor in Yorkshire. There's 3 owls on the flag. That's to represent the Savile family, and then some crosses which are for the Copley family. Anybody here from Dewsbury? Ah, 2 of you. Excellent. Do you know the Dewsbury motto? Oh, dearie me, dearie me. Wow, okay. Deus noster refugium et virtus. God is our refuge and strength. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Dewsbury motto. And I can't believe I got that right without looking at my paperwork. Right, shortly I'm going to be introducing you to the architect of the town hall, Mr. Henry Oldham, and a couple more of my friends. Please join me outside Dewsbury Town Hall from the shop Superdry. Yeah, so that was kind of recycled and used for those letters on the display, which I think is fantastic.
Do we know where the air raid shelter is? I always wondered about that.
It's somewhere under here, where I don't know.
Underneath.
Nobody knows, to be honest.
Yeah. I suppose when they redo it all, it might come up.
When they'll,
Yeah. And they're taking the bandstand down.
It's broken. Just that couple of cement for you, Simon.
I will be doing, don't you worry.
Just be careful, policemen will do you if you're not.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we're just in time. Speaking of time, there's going to be somebody else speaking to you. Quite a lot about time. It'll all make more sense very shortly. I'm also going to introduce you to Henry Oldham, who's the architect of Dewsbury Town Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the policemen have already known. Oh my God, the rat capture, ladies and gentlemen. We're just in time to meet a very interesting gentleman who's also going to be telling us a little bit about time.
Rat catcher, you're on. Well, you're going to catch some of these rats. They're at it. But they're everywhere. Right, well, just go in that bin there. Catch one. Yes, if you could, right, that would be really good. Oh. we've got such a problem with rats.
Luckily, a lot of them got
Found one.
de-elected. You found a rat?
Yeah.
Well, there's about 1 million others.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
Oh, about 80 years.
80 years catching rats?
Yeah.
You must know their families. Do they
Ah.
invite you to the rat Christmas
He's
parties?
the same age as me. He's been producing them for years and years. That's why they're all over Dewsbury.
They are.
Yeah.
And the river, I suppose, that helps.
Well, yeah, but they don't like getting washed too often.
No, they don't like
No.
being washed.
But
bit like yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ratcatcher. Please keep us safe from all those rats. Yes. But and stick around because I can see some rats here somewhere. If you see a rat, shout rat. What do you shout?
Rat.
Rat. Well, that's going to help. Okay.
It's time.
It's time. It's time. So one of the oldest shops. Quite an interesting concept, isn't it? One of the oldest shops here in Dewsbury is a watchmaker. And watches weren't really made till about 200 years ago. And it makes me, I'm the watchmaker. It makes us think about time. What is time? How do you tell time? What's going on? The really interesting thing is, at midday, everywhere in the world, the shadow of a stick is the smallest it can be because the sun is overhead. That's how we start. That's our benchmark to time. The shortest shadow. Now here, well, that's Greenwich Mean Time. The sun isn't overhead till 11 minutes past 12. Greenwich Mean Time is 11 minutes before us here in Dewsbury. Until about, there was a law passed in 1820, 1822, so between 1822 and 1835, the time changed. The time didn't physically change, the world's always the same, but the time changed. And that was because of, we might be able to, but there was a railway line, one of the first railway lines in the world that went round Dewsbury to three railway stations, one at the end, which was the goods yard by the river. There was one in the centre, which was called Central Station, and the one that's still left is Dewsbury Station now. So that railway line was built in 1846. Railways in general were only invented in 1830. So 1830 is 6:30, isn't it? No, 1830 as in 200 years ago. So we needed the right time. But you still had to know the right time to get aboard a boat, because the way in which you gauged how far you went round the planet, you needed to know the time, as in when the sun was overhead, and to get your longitude and latitude. So time is really important for knowing where you are. Where you are on the planet, sort of where you are in your life. So if you're a rat catcher who's been catching rats for 80 years, you've probably got a bit of experience. If you're someone new at the job, like, I don't know, Keir Starmer, you've got a catch-up time, haven't you? And this is the idea. Time is in our language all the time. We talk about time. There are words and things like that. Think of a couple of words. This is great. If we went somewhere really cold, like, I don't know, Greenland, they'd have like 20 words for snow. Different kinds of snow. This is a fun game. Think of a word for being late. I'm always late. I should be dressed as the White Rabbit. So we're going to go round. You're going to tell me a word. It can be the same as the last person, and I'm not going to give you such a word for being late.
Cardiff. That's a really good one. So like Cardiff, isn't it? Yeah. Just late. Pardon? Too late. Okay. Anybody else? Pastor? Yeah. Anybody else? Behind. Yes, it's behind. Running behind. Just late.
Slow coach.
Slow coach, like from kind of thing. Well, I don't want you to be late. It's almost as I script the stuff. I don't want you to be late for the next thing that you're going to go and see. Don't we love Simon?
Absolutely not. Here we go.
So, thank you for listening to my small treatise on time. Because I'm here, and you haven't met me before, I'm the guy who paints these ghastly pictures all around town of Eileen Fenton and Betty Boothroyd and the other one.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart I did. I don't know where I find the time. But I love painting. And I love Dewsbury because we have a community of people that are nice to meet. And it's been lovely meeting you, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to look at your handouts, look at photos 13 and 14, I'd like to introduce you to what would have been the Empire Palace Theatre, now the Empire House. So, before the theatre was built, there used to be a manor house there, which was then demolished. The Empire Palace opened on the 2nd of August 1909, and it's known for having great sight lines because it had beams instead of pillars, which were quite ahead of its time. The Empire was an important place for Christmas pantomime. However, Reg Bolton, the driving force behind the pantomimes, died shortly after Christmas 1954, and the theatre closed abruptly one night in April 1955 and demolished in the 1960s, and then the Empire House was built. If any of you have seen the documentary, that's the leaflet which is seen on screen. That remains in my collection. That's the actual one. The Empire Palace Theatre was one of many cinemas and theatres of entertainment around the town. There was so much more on offer, including a circus, which I'll tell you more about later. The circus is something that's often missed out of the history books, which I'll be telling you more about shortly. But for now, let's go down to the location of the Playhouse. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, long before any of us were born, Austin's Steel Company, they used to be sited here after they moved from the location just opposite. They moved from there because they wanted to build a covered market, which opened in 1904, which is there today. Austin's left there, moved here, and then the most important thing to me is eventually there would become the Playhouse Cinema, which was regarded as Dewsbury's finest cinema, which opened in October 1931. Go look at picture 15, you can actually see a picture of it. It had an Art Deco fascia. Sadly, the Playhouse was demolished in 2001. Just behind me here is what is now known as Corporation Street. It used to be called New Bridge Street. It was renamed Corporation Street once the corporation bought it and redeveloped that area. And at one point, there was a bridge around here. This was all open because the water runs all the way down here and in front of the town hall. Does anybody remember the Playhouse? You do? Fantastic.
Go to Miners Matinee Saturday morning. Miners Matinee on Saturday morning.
You used to go to the Miners Matinee on
Yeah.
Saturday morning?
Yeah, they just put kids' pictures on.
Did they?
Tales from Europe and all that.
Oh, really? That's interesting. That's going to be really helpful, is that?
I can't remember much of what we watched.
Can you
I
remember
remember
anything?
eating
Can you
lots.
remember anything specific
Dad used to go.
about
We got
the
a nice
ABC
lobby.
Miners?
We got a nice lobby. We got a badge. We got a badge saying ABC Miner badge.
Okay,
You're bringing back memories now, aren't you?
I'm certainly bringing back memories. So,
Oh, memories.
you remember the ABC Miners?
Yes.
You'll remember the ABC Miners song.
Yeah.
Well, in case you've forgotten some of the words, I've just handed you out all the words, and I expect you to. We'll have one go. We'll go through it once. Let's have a bit of a sing song. If you can hear it. And I want to hear all your voices. We are the boys and girls well known as the ABC. And every Saturday we line up to see the films we like and to shout aloud with glee. Louder, come on. Just a happy crowd are we. We're all pals together with all the ABC. You've heard enough of my lovely singing voice. Thank you very much. You all did great. Thank you. Don't worry, that's the last sing-song on today's tour. We're just going to move on a few yards to Dewsbury Central Station. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dewsbury Central Station. It dates from 1880 to 1964. There was actually a temporary building before that though, from 1874. On one of the pillars, it's no longer there, there used to be a sign that read, ring 3 times for porter. I'm not sure you get that service these days in many train stations. So as you can see now, it's all being blocked up. But if you had to go back to, I don't know, the mid-70s, or when the station were open, you'd walk through those gates and you'd walk straight into the booking hall, which I believe was just on your right. Once you got your ticket, you'd then go up the stairs and it took you onto platform level, which was just where the current ring road now lies. The ring road were built and put there in about the mid-1980s. We're about to see another cinema and theatre. Follow me, ladies and gentlemen.
Are those the original gates?
What's that, sorry?
Are they the original gates?
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Right.
I believe
Because
so.
some of those, they, you know, in other places, they use the space under the arches, don't they?
It'd be nice to have little wine bars and things like that, or little craft shops, that kind of thing. But actually, when they were doing Ring Road, a lot of that were actually taken down. A lot of people don't know.
I remember that being
once they
open.
filled it in,
I remember it being open.
it were open,
Yeah.
but they also took the demolished part of it and put some of it back. I'm only assuming that was to strengthen it for the Ring Road. So it was taken down and put back up, which I think is fantastic, because we've lost a lot in Dewsbury, and it would have been a shame if we didn't have that fascia still to look at today.
Didn't the refuse collectors actually fill it in with rubbish?
I dread to think, I don't know. I hope not. So for safety reasons, we're doing this location from here as opposed to going over the busy dual carriageway. So talking about theatres and cinemas, there used to be a Theatre Royal, which was just on the opposite side of the ring road there. It dates back to the 1800s, but it had a fire on the 4th of May 1895. Work started on reconstructing the building on June 26th of the same year, and it reopened on the 12th of August 1895. It then later reopened on the 6th of July 1931 as the Tudor Cinema. Some of you may remember the Tudor, you do, fantastic. Sadly, its closure was announced on March 27th, 1965, and demolition announced February 15th, 1974. It did spend some of its time, I believe, as a bingo hall before its demolition. For those that have seen the documentary, that's the actual leaflet. It's very, very rare that we're seen on screen. In all my years of collecting Dewsbury memorabilia, I've never come across another one of those. It takes pride of place in my collection. Something else that I've got, this wasn't seen on screen, is a collection of these. Now I know at least one other person's got a collection of these magazines. That one there dated 1939, it says on front. It's amazing how they've stood the test of time. So I keep those and protect those so people can see them in the future. I've got them wrapped up, but just to show you what inside these little booklets are. This is what people would see when they got these little booklets. You know, different kinds of advertisements, and there's an advert there for the Tudor itself. You know, showing what's going to be happening. Bickers there. Bickers used to be in Marketplace, and they demolished the building, and then they moved to the buildings just around the corner here, which most of us will remember that one. Though Bickers, I think, there were Wade's upstairs, Wade's with cafe and whatnot. But they did start in Marketplace, but that building was sadly later demolished. So that's those. Whilst we're at this location, I must point out there was a company on the other side of the road there, I believe called Slades and Bullock. They're the ones responsible for making lettered rock. That's right, it started here in Dewsbury, letter drop. A lot of people think it was Blackpool. It was Dewsbury. Okay, so the company, the first letter drop they did said War Emma. Now that were a name of a track from many years ago. Then it's available to listen to it on YouTube and other musical platforms. So yeah, it started here right at Dewsbury. The building has been demolished, but if you do ever venture across that side of town, there is part of the wall that remains. It's if I remember rightly, it's a curved wall. That still stands today. And it's a shame there's not some kind of plaque there, because really, there should be. I'll put it on my to-do list.
I've done a video of that.
I saw that. So next, I'm going to introduce you to the architect, Henry Alton, who I mentioned earlier. Also, a clown called Funny Fred Hall. I mentioned earlier when we was near the old school about the pancake dog and forgotten history. Fred Hall was a well-known clown, a household name in Dewsbury for years. Everybody knew him. People even said to the kids, "Oh, do you think you are Funny Fred Hall?" You know, if you're being a bit cheeky or you're trying to be funny, it was an household name. Now, up until recently, it'd been completely forgotten about. It's very rarely mentioned on social media, in the history books, but again, it was something that was so important and so prominent to the people of Dewsbury, and no doubt the wider area as well. Well, Funny Fred Hall's back with me today for one day. I'll be introducing you to him as well. And also, a snake charmer. Now you're probably thinking, what relevance is a snake charmer? So, if you have a look at picture 18, Edwin Cruest, who as I'm acting as today, opened the first circus in Dewsbury, the first permanent circus. Again, it's often not mentioned in the history books of time, and that dated back to the 1800s. It reopened as a music hall in 1897. The building sadly burnt down in 1898 and rebuilt and reopened on Christmas Eve 1903. It was then again partially rebuilt in 1919. On 20th of January 1920, it reopened as the Whitehall Cinema. Again, this is a cinema that never seems to come up in history books, or very rare. Online, when people talk about the cinemas, it doesn't get mentioned. I mean, a lot of that's probably before all of us time, but still, it's quite prominent. It was supposed to be the most elaborate cinema Dewsbury has ever had, which is quite a big thing to say, especially we have it Playhouse just round the corner, being at a later date. I'm going to take you around to the location where it was now. There's nothing left at all to say, you know, this magnificent circus stood here. And as for the cinema, nothing really for the cinema either, which is a real shame. Well, actually, there's one thing. It's actually called Whitehall Way. There's a sign I'll point out on the wall. So I'm going to take you around now and introduce you to a few of my friends. I will show you where the cinema and the circus stood. Ladies and gentlemen, this would have been the circus, and in later years, still before our time, the Whitehall Cinema, a magnificent cinema and circus, and the Hippodrome, which is the point, stood right here. The sign I mentioned earlier, Whitehall Way, is just on the wall opposite there. You can see it behind the car. But apart from that, and me banging on about it all the time, there's nothing else to remember it by. Good afternoon! I'm going to take you across road now. Good afternoon, hey! It's Funny Fred Hall, back for one day! Hey! Oh, the architect, Mr. Alton. Ladies and gentlemen. He's going to also now tell you a little bit about his profession here in Dewsbury, and a snake charmer as well.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henry Alton, architect of this parish. I was actually born in Stretford-on-Avon, would you believe, in 1840s, thereabouts. Nobody's quite sure. But I came up to Dewsbury because as a young architect I could see that the big factories and the mills were being built in the north of England where the Industrial Revolution was taking place. Mass production was taking off and they needed big buildings, and big buildings means big money, and that's what I was after. So I came up here in the early 1860s and I started my business, built some houses and some schools, and in 1863 was my first breakthrough when I was commissioned by the Michelle brothers to build this building. Michelle brothers Shoddy and Mungo, I was about to say workhouse. No, I didn't build any workhouses. Yes, Shoddy and Mungo Mill. Anybody know what shoddy is? You all know what shoddy is? Well, you are standing in the very first place in the world that started recycling. Shoddy is cloth made from incorporating recycled cotton textiles which have been reduced back to the fibres and then incorporated into the new material which goes into a new cloth. So you get a slightly substandard cloth, but it's cheaper to make and it's cheaper to sell. And of course from that, the English language now means, shoddy means not quite good enough. So that's where shoddy comes from. Mungo was the same process, but working with higher quality cloth, worsted cloth, which was a harder process to manage. But anyway, 1863, I built this building, and one of the characteristics, if we walk around the corner very shortly, you'll see that there are 4 faces on the ground floor of this building, which is Robert and William Michelle, the 2 brothers who owned the business, Cobden, who was the foreign minister at the time, and Disraeli, the prime minister at the time. They commemorated them because they were doing remarkably well because of the developments in international trade that the foreign minister and the prime minister were opening up. So they commemorated them. This building got me known in the local community, which meant that by 1872, nearly 10 years later, when the cooperative movement was beginning to take off here in Dewsbury, originating with what at the time was called the Dewsbury Pioneers Industrial Society, which you'll still see written on the side of the Pioneer House, I think. Is it still there, Simon? I believe so. Okay. I'll be cross if it's not.
Actually, no. Yes, it is. It does.
Now, it took them a while to get themselves organised, to raise the money, so that we actually started construction in 1878 and finished the building in 1880. Now that building, when you come to look at it, you will find is covered in decoration. Animals, plants, people, equipment, all sorts of things, but the dominant motif, the design motif, is the beehive, which of course symbolises the cooperative work of the bees, and the analogy is of course the cooperative work of the workers. That building, in its own time, got me known in the national and international architects community and the corporations and the like who were commissioning new buildings. So that meant that when that was finished in 1880, 1884 was when I was commissioned to produce the Swansea Central Library in Renaissance style. That was in 1884, and then they rattled off. 1885 was Burnley Town Hall, 1886 was Dewsbury Town Hall here, which of course was a natural progression from the fact that 3 years earlier, in 1883, I was elected Mayor of Dewsbury. So I was an important bigwig in the local community, and I got to design and build the town hall. You'll come across another famous name, John Holroyd, who was another famous mill owner in the area. He donated the clock in the clock tower on the Dewsbury Town Hall. So I went on from there. I became, we had some changes in the partnership that I was working with that you'll find on the foundation stone there. That was Holtom and Fox. Fox was my apprentice for several years until I elevated him to a partner with the commencement of Dewsbury Town Hall. The last building, in fact, in the local area which I produced on my own is Morley Town Hall, which is a grade 2 listed, sorry, Morley Town Hall is a grade 1 listed building. The other buildings are grade 2 listed buildings. So I made my name producing major civic buildings, and the 3 major buildings here in Dewsbury, Michelle's Mill here, Pioneer House just across the road behind you, and Dewsbury Town Hall are all courtesy of Henry Holton, architect of this parish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you joined us round the corner. Tell us a little bit more about your building.
Michelle and Robin, the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister. So it was the introduction of this fine stone carving which started my reputation. Like to move along? Do you have any preferences, Simon, which way? The original building is from the turret, and the original design at ground level, as you can see, we've got butcher, baker, candlestick maker, all the usual retail outlets that you would expect, and in its day there's carpets, joinery, furniture, anything and everything. The first floor included the first introduction of social media, in that it included conversation rooms. People actually got together and talked to each other, and had a usage of this these days. And of course the cooperative offices. On the top floor was an auditorium with a 1,500 seating capacity. Now, if you know how big Dewsbury Town Hall is, the capacity of Dewsbury Town Hall is about 800. So it's twice the size of the auditorium in Dewsbury Town Hall. So in its day it was a fantastic venue, and in its day it served all sorts of purposes, including cinemas of various types. We've had various famous acts there, lots of old things, music gigs.
Yeah, if you have a look at images 22 and 23, you can see the picture photo of the cinema. Also, the Robe. Now, the Robe was the first film to be shown at the cinema. Anybody that's seen the documentary Memory Lane Dewsbury, I use these on screen, and I've actually got an original leaflet from back then of the Robe. Which are those there.
When was that?
1954, I've got it on it. Don't quote me on that, about 1954, is that right? Around about that time. But that was the original film to be shown.
So almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, you see, there's 1950s, when the cinema starts taking over. Before that, this community and this society was producing events and activities which were filling 1,500-seater auditorium. I don't know what they are. However, yes. As you can see, the front end of the building, I took on the famous faces, carving the chair of the Pioneer Society at the time, and another big wig at the time. On top of it, above each window, you can find there's fruits and equipment and people and all sorts of activities. The co-op, of course, was incredibly successful in its day, until it started declining, probably around the 1950s and 60s. It was very educationally oriented, of course. They put 1.25% of profits into education, and within 10 years of Pioneer House opening, the Co-op Society was running 2 libraries and 10 reading rooms in this area. So they were contributing massively to the movement, which was taking part all over the country of improving the education of the working classes. In 1896 the building was extended with the squared off extension at the end, and then the Italianate extension right on the end with Mr. Gormley's statue standing on top these days was completed in 1914. So that demonstrated the continuing success of the Co-op Society until it started to run down in the mid-20th century.
Many of you might remember Roberto's restaurant. That has actually been remembered, and if you have a look at picture 24, they've incorporated part of Roberto's, looks like a glass window, in with the current day building, which is fantastic. So that can be seen today. So the council compulsory purchased it in 2011, I believe about 13-14 million pounds to make it to what it is today, which is a magnificent job, I'm sure you'll agree. If you look at picture number 25, you can see it back then when it had just been covered up by netting and whatnot as the renovation started. So thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last location on today's tour. The building behind me here, 16 to 18 Marketplace, is believed to be the oldest domestic building in Dewsbury, part of which was reconstructed or partly demolished to open a cinema, which opened in 1913. It opened up as a picture house and known as the Regal, the Asoldo, the Classic, the Canon and the Apollo. Probably not that in that order, but I believe it was Apollo in 1993 when it closed.
Yeah. Robin Hood was the last film. Robin Hood was the last film. The Disney Robin Hood.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know, I went to see it.
After its closure in 1993, later, some of you may remember this, it then opened up as a furniture shop. The funny thing about that is when you went in to look at furniture, it still had the cinema slope. So you'd be talking to someone, you'd be like, this is a nice sofa. You'd be walking down to the front of the cinema. It's quite comedic really. But the most important thing to me is, for years, I think people have been to Dewsbury and gone, lived and died, and most people for many years thought, well, the old 1913 fascia is long gone, absolutely long gone. Because the Asoldo group had a thing about putting false frontages on, which you can see part of it there, where the dome would have been. After the front started to deteriorate, some of the wooden fascia panels started to come off. Then we noticed one day, I looked up about inside, you could see part of the original 1913 dome still exists. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was done over a year, so long ago. Unbelievable. So part of the dome still does exist behind that false frontage. Most of it, sadly, the rest of it has pretty much gone. The actual cinema itself has been demolished. If you have to go through there now, there's just nothing goes into just the land behind, which is a real shame. So it needs to be rebuilt going forward. Hopefully one day I'll have that fascia reconstructed. I have contacted the council a number of times, and it's something they didn't commit to, but they seem to smile about and say that'd be a nice thing to do. Not so long after that, we got these boards put up, which just tidy it up a lot for the town. So hopefully, fingers crossed, one day we'll get that restored. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome. I'm gonna have to redo this bit, sorry. I get nervous in front of the camera.
That's fine. I can edit it.
Good.